I remember like one of my team members, who's also a dear friend, she actually came over to my house and hid my car keys.
Welcome to Mom Mentality, your virtual village of support. I'm Jessica Campbell, your family wellness coach, and I am committed to helping you prioritize your and your family's well-being. This podcast will be like your favorite ladies group chat come to life. We'll share the ups and downs of life for moms just like you, get real advice from coaches and experts, and I'll pop in with my own stories and tips on everyday challenges to the big questions. Whether you're juggling work from home, balancing adult life with parenthood, tackling ADHD, yours or your kids, or just trying to catch a breath, Mom Mentality is your spot. Okay, so for starters, I'm just going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I am Sonya Belletti. I am a ICF-certified life coach. I'm also a therapist of 25 years and vast backgrounds in serving individuals and families and communities.
I love that. Our topic is going to be around postpartum anxiety, high achieving women. And so I just wanted you to kind of explain a little bit postpartum anxiety, specifically how it differs from just regular anxiety.
Well, postpartum or perinatal anxiety develop during pregnancy. So it can come at conception once someone has found out they're pregnant, and then it can also continue after the birth of a child. How it's different from regular anxiety is that a person experiencing perinatal or postpartum anxiety may not have had other experiences of anxiety prior to, or they may have had anxiety prior to pregnancy, but now it's exacerbated during or after the pregnancy.
Yeah, that sounds like I have anxiety. I've struggled with all of the above. So absolutely. I can't imagine what it's like to not have anxiety. Will you share a little bit about your personal story, I guess, with anxiety and postpartum anxiety?
So for me, I actually did not realize that I had perinatal and postpartum anxiety until I was well out of it. And so I actually, that realization, I would say, came for me about probably, my kids were probably 10 by then.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes. And that was around the time that I decided to pursue my certification in perinatal mental health. And as I'm going through doing my certification and I'm reading and I'm looking at the coursework and I'm like, oh, I experienced that. I experienced that. I experienced that. I experienced that. Oh, that's what was happening with me during that time.
So during that time, did you just kind of like chalk it up to like just motherhood, or how was it showing up for you?
Yeah, I chalk it up to being motherhood. I'd never been a mom before. And, I think it just showed up for me in terms of just doing a whole lot, right? It
Mhm.
was a lot of trying to, I hate to say the word balance, more juggling all the
Mhm.
different things, all the different roles, hyper focused on being really good at every single thing that I was doing. And it was a
Mhm.
lot of things that I was doing. I think there was also just a period where not always allowing my husband to actually show up and be present because, on top of it, I'm a Virgo. So like things need to be done this way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't show up like panic attacks. It didn't show up like, but definitely in the sense like the intense worry was not debilitating in the sense that I was able to do my day-to-day activities, but it was definitely there. It was
Right.
for me, showed up as hyper control.
Oh yeah. I definitely know a couple of people that struggle with that too, and how it kind of manifests as, it's almost like it manifests as like a false sense of control because you think that you're controlling everything, but really it
Yes.
tends to make more things, I think, spiral out, but we don't realize it at that time. It's just
Yeah.
like manifesting in that way. What would you say was the turning point to coming out of that? I know you said you reflected back so much later, but when did you sort of see the light from that?
Well, it's hard to say because I didn't even know I was in that tunnel, right?
Right.
But I am absolutely grateful that I had a really great support network. And so I think I always had spaces in which I could talk about what was happening for me and receive a lot of support. I think if I had been going through this in isolation, maybe my outcome would have been very different, right?
Mm.
But I was around friends and colleagues who had kids who were older than me, and they were able to hold a lot of space for a lot of the things that I was kind of like talking about, and just to be able to, to give feedback. And again, also luckily for me, I was working with other mental health professionals. And even though they were not certified in perinatal mental health because none of them identified it and said, hey, have you thought that this could be it? But
Right.
definitely still held space for all the feelings and all the things that were kind of coming up. And just friends, my sisters, I have three older sisters who were just kind of like, we'd be like, all right, time to pause, take a break. Grateful for my mom, my mother-in-law, my children's godparents who just were always present and showing up. And so I had a lot of support and I had a lot of space to be able to to step back when I needed to step back.
Right. That's amazing. And I think it's also, I've had conversations with so many people who don't have a lot of a village, but I think it's also really refreshing to hear someone say you had the support and it was
Yes.
still something that was very real for you. So it doesn't necessarily come with one situation or another. And I think that that's amazing. How do you think societal expectations of that, like, quote unquote perfect mom contribute to those struggles?
Well, I think it's around the idea that motherhood is this beautiful thing and it's a wonderful thing and you fall in love with your kids. That is all true. However, I feel that there's an and that is missing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
we often only see the wonderful side of it, and the part that is missing is just the open conversations around identity shifts and not just the physical changes in your body, but hormonal changes, right? Just the way your thought process changes, the way you look at things. There were TV shows that I used to enjoy that I couldn't watch, which were a manifestation of my anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I stopped being able, like, I used to love watching Law and Order. The SVU was my one of my favorites to watch because I was like, sitting in my psychoanalyst mode and like,
Yeah.
yeah, again. I could not watch that from the moment I got pregnant. It brought up so much for me, right? And I am not someone who's like, I don't have a weak stomach. I can look at most things. I can watch almost anything. The only thing that like makes me really squeamish when I'm watching television is like broken bones. Can't deal with that. So,
Yes.
I can, so anything. So that was not something that was normal for me. And I still have not been able to go back to watching those kind of shows.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there are just so many things that you're expecting all this wonderful, like beautiful part of it. And for me, like I love my kids, but if I could have been a mom and not have to go through pregnancy, I would have been like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And I remember like in the middle of my pregnancy, I called my one of my best friends from high school and I was like, why didn't you tell me this? This does not feel good. I don't like being pregnant. You know, of course, there were moments like hearing the first heartbeat and seeing the babies on the first sonogram that I enjoyed. But if I were to like say sum up my overall pregnancy, I didn't enjoy it,
Right. Right.
right? And I think if there were more open conversations where women could experience that without feeling bad or without judgment or feeling like there's something wrong with them, and to be
Yeah.
able to understand in the context of it's like, no, not everybody enjoys pregnancy. Not everybody has this, amazing ease being pregnant and
Mhm.
carrying babies and I say babies because I'm a twin mom. You know,
Very pregnant.
Yes, very, very pregnant. Carrying like babies to full term and having this ease of delivery and recovery and nursing for, many months or sometimes even years, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you fall in love and everything is amazing. And there is that experience. And there's also the experience where some birthing parents have a hard time connecting. Some birthing parents do not enjoy the process. And there needs to be more honest conversations around that.
100%. I was one of the people that actually, when I was pregnant with my first, I loved it, other than the swelling, because I look back at pictures and I'm like, oh my gosh, it looked like my eyes were like bugging because it was just so swollen. But I loved it. I felt great. I had, some morning sickness, but my second and then my third were very hard on my body. I ended up in like a wheelchair with my third when I would
Mm,
try to like have certain times, out and about as a family because I couldn't put pressure on and so for me, I started to grasp the idea of right, of that I could love being pregnant and I loved, like, I was very confident in my body when I was pregnant. I didn't gain a lot of weight with the last two. I actually lost weight. And so I felt good, like looking at myself. I felt very confident, very glowy, that whole thing. I got the glow, but I was
Yeah.
so nauseous the whole time, could barely eat, was losing weight because of that. And my joints hurt all the time. I had no energy. And so that was when I started being able to see that shift and be like, why can't we embrace both? That it can be an incredible process and also acknowledge the fact that it's hard. And I have
Yeah.
a friend that, like, when she's pregnant, she's almost hospitalized because she gets so sick and she's got that HG. I don't know how to say the name, but so she's like, she's at the point where she's like, I cannot do it again because it will kill me. And she's
Mm,
like you, she would have so many kids if it didn't require being pregnant. And
yes.
yeah, it's something I never had thought about until I was in that situation. So it definitely, I agree, needs to be more of a conversation that you can be grateful for something and still have a hard time. And there's also that added layer of shame of like, you should be grateful that you're pregnant when some people
Yes.
can't. And I hate that people do that to moms because, like, yes, that sucks. And I've been on my own, journey of trying to get pregnant, but it doesn't negate the fact that it's hard for the people that can sometimes.
Mhm.
And there is a lot of shame that comes with every aspect, I think, of motherhood. And sometimes we do it to ourselves, sometimes we do it to each other, sometimes it's society. There definitely, we need to raise that conversation a little bit more.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, for sure. I think it's all of the above, right?
yeah,
I mean, even if you think about just if you're a working pregnant person, right? And you're like, okay, now I have to go into now, maternity leave, and there are parameters that are set that tell you when you're supposed to be well enough to get back to work,
right, right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, I remember being well past my 6 weeks, and I had a box of things at my husband's office that I was like, oh, I want to go through it because I was feeling good and I was there. And I went through this, and the box wasn't heavy and it was up in a space, but just doing this work of like at one point I remember moving the box, and I remember leaving his office, and I became so lightheaded in the middle of the street because I had overexerted myself.
Right,
And I was already past this period in which I was supposed to already be okay based on
right.
standards were set for me.
Yeah. And it's
So,
more than physical. It's like
yes.
my last pregnancy was the hardest postpartum I ever experienced, but I was good. I felt amazing until I hit like the 6 month mark. And I work for a school by day and so I had the whole summer off. I had my daughter in April, went back for like 4 weeks and then took the whole summer off. And when I got back and I had to get into that rhythm again and stuff, I hit this mental wall, went into a huge depression. And that's just one of those things too, where I was quite literally losing my mind when
Mm.
I should have been okay from what they say, but I didn't hit that block until later. And with my first two, I knew I had postpartum depression a little bit and the anxiety and track that progress, but it was more gradual. It didn't hit in that way. And so because it looks so different for everyone, it's really hard to say when
Yeah.
you should actually go back to work.
No, it's funny. I remember my first postpartum client I had. It was a couple who came in for couples therapy, and they were 7 years postpartum. And the mom was still dealing with being able to connect with her child, whom she desperately wanted. And I remember like I had this one session with them, and at the moment I didn't feel super confident. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
here's a resource for you to find someone who is way more experienced, because I had literally just taken my exam and gotten my certification. I was like, I'm not ready yet. But I was so grateful that I was able to identify what I was seeing
Mm-hmm.
and not just focus on it in the sense of like, oh, this is just about couples and communication. And they came back. So I ended up having like 2 sessions with them. The first session in which I was like, this is what I'm seeing. Here is a referral to get more expert support around this. And they came back 6 months later to be able to say that finally that the mom had gotten treatment with someone who knew about postpartum, and they were doing better. She had returned to herself
Oh,
simply
that's
by just being
beautiful.
able to have this thing be identified, right?
Right,
And to
right,
receive the care that she needed.
right. And then to come back and tell you that's so, often we don't get that. So that's
Yeah.
just amazing that you have that story and that they did come back to tell you that, because, without you, who knows where they would have been if you hadn't, like you said, identified and sent them in the right direction.
Well, not even without me. I think without the space where moms are able to show up
Mm,
and really speak about what they are and receive expert care around postpartum support, right?
right,
I,
right.
yes, I think I was just a small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, yeah, you were like that catalyst, that person that could say, and they may not have experienced that before, and so that's why I say you,
Yeah.
because it's, like having somebody who is willing to, and to have that humility to say, I don't have that all for you, but let me send you in the right direction too, and hold that space, but also have the humility to say, like, I'm not going to try to
Mhm.
fix it, or I'm not going to try to do this because otherwise I'm not good at my job, or like all
Right.
the stories, like, to be able to send them to somewhere to get that care is, I think, really, I mean, it's an honorable thing.
Thank you.
When it comes to working, since we're talking about that topic, specifically you wanted to talk about high performing women,
Mhm.
how do you think that they are more susceptible to those mental health struggles?
Well,
Or
the
maybe not more, but like how specifically, I guess, are they susceptible?
I think they're more susceptible in terms of being untreated,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because there is always, like the perfectionism, the high achievement doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It's there in all aspects of life. And what what tends to happen is like you ignore the things because especially when you're in like a high intensity environment, you don't get to necessarily feel your feelings all the time.
Right.
Right? And so you're in this space and you're in this space of doing, right? So you're showing up, you're being the best employee, you're leading a team,
Right.
right? You're creating change, you're whatever it is that you're doing in your job. And then you're home and you're trying to be mommy, and maybe you're also trying to be wife. And
Right.
because you're high achieving, you are trying to do all of these things really, really well.
Right.
And the reality is we can't do all the things at the same time really, really well.
Yeah.
And in turn, what ends up happening is you stop taking care of yourself because now the hyper focus is on being a good employee, it's on being a good mom, on being a good partner, right? And I'm just sticking to those top three as it
Yeah.
relates to
Yeah.
parenting, but there are all the
Mm.
other titles that we can go. And then
Oh, yeah.
the only thing that we get when we're trying to be good to everyone else but ourselves is anxiety and depression.
Right. And
That's
burnout.
it.
Some adrenal
Exactly.
fatigue.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. All of the above.
Yeah, that's so true. It's hard to just be on all the time. And I've definitely fallen into that pattern of like, I'm supposed to do all the things. I know it's been especially hard for me. Now I'm in a place where I love what I'm doing, which completely changes the game too, because when you work just because you have to work, or you don't have that passion, it's a little bit easier to kind of like turn it on and off and be like, yeah, I go through the motions, I come home, and this is where I enjoy my time. But when you love, working, and then you also love being a mom, that creates a whole nother layer of wanting to be on all the time and take care of things. And
Okay.
my like I'm like, well, I need to take care of the house. The house is a mess. This is terrible. I'm being a terrible, housekeeper and a terrible homemaker and all the things. And my husband's like, dude, you work full time now. Like before, you were staying home and you had the time to do it. Now we just do it together. And thankfully, I too have good support. But I think that that's a very common reality.
Hmm.
Logically, I know I don't, there's no possible way to keep up with everything. But there's that thought in my head, that keeps telling me it's got to be possible. Something out there is going to make this work. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, no.
No. But again, when you're in that high achieving space, right, you're not thinking about that. Like I remember it, like as you were talking, it brought up a memory around the time I was pregnant. And so for context, at the time when I was pregnant, I was working as an executive director for a nonprofit. And so I had the same team with me for my entire time at that job, which was almost 18 years. So my team and I were very, very close.
Mm.
And I remember the week the week before I actually gave birth, and my children, like I gave birth early because there were complications. But the week before I gave birth, we had a field trip, and I had preeclampsia. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like literally swelling up every single day. Like I've had to like call someone to, one day it was raining. Someone had to like literally massage my legs out of my rain boots that I was wearing on this day. And so on this particular day, when we had this field trip, and it was like an hour drive away, and I knew I couldn't make the drive. So I made my sister take off, and my sister drove me to this field trip. And I remember like I was doing a minimum, but on the way back, like I literally blew up. And we were coming to the end of our summer program, and there's usually a performance that the kids do in the program. And they were just like, you cannot come to work. And I was like, but I can't come to work. What do you mean I can't go to work? What are you talking about? And they were like, you need to take care of yourself. But my brain couldn't fathom that. In my mind, I'm like, but I need to show up. I'm the director. I have this job to do.
Right.
Right? It
Right.
didn't matter that my legs were 3 times their normal size. It didn't matter that like I could not fit any of my shoes. I was like, I'm supposed to do this thing.
Yeah.
And yes, now looking back, I can laugh about it, but it's crazy. Like I remember like even like it was like 3 days later, I was admitted to the hospital, right? After this. And while I was in the hospital, there were some papers that needed to be signed, and I'm like, bring it. Let me sign it from my hospital bed. It's crazy.
Right.
But this
Right.
is the pressure, like when you're in this high performing role and you're like, I need to be able to get this thing done, right? And I was in a space where I didn't have a second. There was no, there was no assistant executive director. It was me.
Yeah.
And yes, and so it's like the idea of taking care of myself was not even on the top of the list, even when I needed to take care of myself because my blood pressure needed to be stabilized in order for them to be able to birth my kids.
Right. Yeah. You're talking about all this swelling, and I remember with my oldest was the only time I swelled, and I remember taking my feet like out of my shoes. I got those like moccasins because they were like soft, and at the time I was doing hair. So I was behind the chair all day. And
Mm,
I remember like my feet would be just like misshapen when I would take out my feet, like the top of my foot would be swollen. And I got to think like there was a little part of me that like I'm a little stubborn, and I'm not a smoker, and there's a lot of smokers in the hair world. And so often people were taking a ton of breaks to go smoke, and I was never taking breaks, but I was on my feet all day and pregnant. And if I hadn't been the stubborn person that I am, to where at the tail end when I started swelling, I was like, you know what? I'm taking a smoke break. I think I probably would have done the same thing and just overlooked it,
mhm.
because I would have, like I would have just continued to do the best, because I'm one of those people that even if when I'm not in a, higher, I guess, level role, like everything I do, I could be selling toilet paper and I want to sell toilet paper to the best of my ability. I want to know the ins and outs of the type of toilet paper if that's what I'm doing. And so I could definitely see that having been a thing. And thankfully, I got a lot of pushback from that too, of like people saying, well, why are you taking off? Why do you get to leave early? Why this, why that? And like, because we'd like roll dice, or we'd, draw straws or whatever. If we were slow, who gets to go home? And I was always like, I'm down. If you got to send someone home, send me, I'm good. And, I got a little bit of bullying for that, because like, well, we didn't get to do that when we were pregnant. And I was like, but I have support, and my man's letting me go home and put my feet up. So I'm gonna, but
Yeah.
that's also something that we run into too, of other people saying like, okay, get over it and do your job. Right.
Mhm.
And so that's a whole other added layer, I think, of shame that we get just as working women who want to have both, because somewhere along the line, it's like we've been fed this idea that it has to be one or the other.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It really doesn't. It's just finding I know you said you hate to say balance, but it's finding what works for you where you feel
Right.
balanced enough to care for both of these things, you know?
No, oh, balance is one of my favorite words. Balance was just not applying to
Just
anything I was doing back then.
right, right,
Back then I
yeah,
was juggling. I would
right.
not, yes, I will not even say I was balancing because it would be a misnomer. But balance in this moment where I am in life is one of my favorite words.
Yes, yeah, I'm at that phase now too because like I said, I love what I'm doing now and the direction I'm going. And so now I almost have to catch myself because I'm like, this is my baby. My job is my baby. My podcast is my baby. And it's like, no, I have three babies. I need to make sure I'm making the time for both things. And that's something
Yeah.
I'm still working with. But what do you think are some of the signs specifically that go more unnoticed when you are in a high performing role like that?
I'm going to say the top one is going to be guilt. It's going to be
Mhm.
a lot of guilt around how you're doing things. Shame is, a close second. I think there's also a numbing that tends to happen, right? Like you're just not, okay, I don't have time to feel this. I don't have time to deal with this. And so whatever feelings are coming up to the surface, it's like I'm pushing them down and I'm just going to keep going. So not actually taking the time to sit and process what is going on. I think again, just this hyper control, not being able to listen to your body and just being able to say, okay, I understand that this is important. However, this moment that I need for myself is also important,
Right.
right? And it's this idea just recognizing like, and for self-care, when it comes to that, it's we don't need like, oh, 3 hours in a spa or to go on a
Right.
vacation. And sometimes, or oftentimes, at least what I've seen with my clients, with my coaching clients, is just the thought of like, wait a minute, I have this need, and here's how I plan to take care of it is enough. So yeah, those are the top things that I would say that kind of show up in, when you're talking about high performance folks, because it doesn't always show up as a panic attack. It doesn't always show up, right, in this way
Yeah.
that is so obvious of not being able to breathe or to time your
Right.
chest. It looks very different.
Right. And sometimes even panic attacks don't look like what we think a panic attack is going to look like. There's so
Mhm.
many times now where I'll be driving and I'll just say, "Oh, having a panic attack." And my husband's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm just seemingly very calm. But now I've gotten to the point where I've done enough work that I can feel it and not like succumb to it. And so I can say, "Oh, I'm noticing this sensation. I know it's happening." And I just call it out and he'll be like, "Where is this even coming from?" I'm like, "Don't know." I have a lot of trauma, so I'm like, somewhere, it's coming from somewhere. We don't
Mhm.
know. We're just letting it roll. But it can be panic even in different ways. And it could be not panicky at all. It can, like you said, have that need to control things or feel like you're controlling things to kind of push that uncomfortability, I guess, down and try to make it
Yeah.
go away in the best way we know how. How can women recognize more of those subtle signs of their own?
I think it begins with just honoring like the journey to motherhood. I think as a society, we have shifted away from that, and it's like this other thing that we do. But I think honoring it just from the fact that, like, when you're pregnant, every single day, your body is literally sustaining life. You are growing limbs, you are growing a heart, you're growing lungs, you're developing a brain,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And all of that is happening through your body. And I think just honoring that, like that is an exhausting process. Your body is changing, and not just again from weight gain or bigger boobs. We're talking about your organs are shifting to make room for a baby.
Right.
Your hormones, right? All these
Right.
internal things. Your biochemistry is changing for you to be able to prepare to that. And so I think once you honor the journey and you recognize that these things are happening, it creates space to become gentler with yourself, to become more compassionate, and
Yeah.
also to ask the people around you to be compassionate,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's this thing where it's just another thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's easy to be able to see the physical things when, okay, this person has preeclampsia. Oh, this person has hypertension. This person has, gestational diabetes or carpal tunnel, whatever things are. But we don't always hold space for the invisible pain of
Right.
pregnancy,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
don't hold space for the identity loss that comes. We don't hold space for the fear. We don't hold space for like the hopes and the dreams that just kind of like, am I going to be good at this? How will
Right.
I know what to do? And I think just honoring that part of the journey, and I think more women speaking up about the pregnancy journey, not always just being this beautiful thing, that it's this beautiful thing. And sometimes it's really messy and scary, and you're okay, and there's nothing wrong with you if you don't go through this journey thinking that it's beautiful and that you want to do it 20 times, with
Right.
cartwheels,
Right. Right.
whatever the case is,
Yeah.
So I think definitely conversations like this will help, because it's just important for women to know that it is like parenting, it's one of the hardest things,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It is
No
one of the
manual.
hardest things you'll ever do.
Yeah.
Beautiful, amazing, right? My kids have been my greatest teacher throughout my life. And as much as I'm talking about it and that I didn't enjoy being pregnant, if it meant that I would have my kids, I would probably do it again, right?
Right.
Probably, I would definitely do it again because I do love them.
Right.
However, I wish I had been more prepared, that it was not always a beautiful journey, so that I would have been able to go through it with less worry that, wait, there is something wrong with me because I don't feel this happiness. There's something wrong with me because I don't feel all this excitement around, being pregnant. I think, being able to, if there had been a space that I had been aware of, maybe that the space does exist, I just wasn't aware, right? Because it wasn't
Right.
so public, maybe it would have felt different.
Right. Right. I was thinking as you were saying that too, it made me think a lot of times we want to see like the physical side. So we don't take it seriously unless you see the physical like changes happening. And then I'm like, we do see the physical changes happening and we still ignore it. Like we see a big old belly growing
Yeah,
and people swelling and we still are like, oh, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, where do we think all the organs are going? And I think there's also a lot of people that just don't take it that seriously. I've heard people say, well, it's not that hard, like to get pregnant or to make a baby, but it's like you're literally making a whole other human being. You are sustaining life like that. If you don't look at that as like a huge miracle, then that, like I don't understand how you could not. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's hard, which brought up another thought of like that when they talk about butterflies and how they
mhm,
literally turn to goo in their cocoon. Like that's messy. That's scary. No one wants to turn to goo, and yet we do. So we can come out on the other side and have something beautiful out of it. But,
yeah.
I imagine if you talk to a butterfly while they're in their cocoon, they're probably like, this isn't cool.
No, they're not. It's
Like,
funny that
I
you talk about that because I'm creating this membership program. It's called the Chrysalis Haven.
Oh, I love it. I literally was trying to plan so much stuff around like butterfly stuff. And I had like this whole story of like finding butterflies and like I've seen the like butterfly pop up throughout my journey to get where I'm at. And even though I decided not to name my program anything with a butterfly, it's in my logo. So it's like my cursive J and then the other side is the butterfly wing because I was
Yeah,
like, it still brings me back to that thought process of like the metamorphosis that you go through. I'm just
yeah.
weird about words, so I had a really hard
No,
time.
no, it's fine. Yeah, in my current, well, I just rebranding and I have a new logo that's coming out, but in my current logo, which is just my name, the I is actually a butterfly. Like the
Yeah,
little dot over the I is a
I
butterfly.
love that. Yeah, I love it. I love the butterfly analogy. I think it's just
Yeah.
it resonates with me for sure. When women are like specifically professionals and they're going through these things, how is that showing up for them and their families? Like what do you I guess when you've worked with clients or just for yourself, how do you see that showing up for women within their home life?
In relationships, it can be a lot of stress within the relationship, right? Especially because you don't have the space to focus on every single. And so there's a hyper focus on the things that feel like it's within your control or the things that you can actually do. And now, because you're not dealing with your own emotions, then you definitely don't have space to deal with your partner's emotions, right?
Right.
And now
Right.
if you have, say you have older kids, because it doesn't always happen with the first pregnancy. We
Yeah.
know that, women can develop postpartum issues with subsequent pregnancies. And so it might also look like not having the energy or the space or just the emotional capacity to be able to take care of your other kids,
Mhm.
right? Because there's energy for this one thing. And now, because, we're an overachiever, the one thing that we have the energy for is the job.
Right, right, right. It's so funny that you say that because that's one of the ways that I made the decision to not have more kids and to finally decide to like actually get surgery to not have more kids because I was at that point where every one of my postpartums got worse and worse. And I was like, I finally got to the point because I would have like all the babies, but I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to disrupt my family again and go back to that dark space where everyone else in the family is lacking just because I want to add more and I want to, go through this again, or I wanted a big family or whatever. I have 3 kids, so we're still technically considered a big family anyway, but that was definitely a deciding factor of like how are the relationships with all my kids going? How's my relationship with my husband? And we're in a point where my oldest, she struggles with sensory stuff and ADHD and just a lot of fears and anxiety anyway. And so I was like, she's in a good place and I'm able to put that time and effort she needs. I don't want to disrupt all of that by going through this again. And knowing that it takes a couple years, right, for your hormones to go back to normal, that's a long time. People say it's so short, but when you
Yeah.
think of it in terms of how it's affecting everyone around you and yourself, it's a long time. And I was like, it's not another 2 year plus years I'm willing to give up with my family now. And so yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true how the lack of energy, I definitely had that with my last, like I felt terrible because I couldn't
Right.
couldn't walk half the time. Went to the kids museum, I'm in a wheelchair. I was like, yeah, it's fine.
So, as human beings, and you don't have the capacity to do for yourself and to even show up for yourself emotionally, it's hard to do it for other people. You can fake it for a little bit, but after a while, it just kind of like what you have, all the angst and the pain and the anxiety that you have within just spill over,
Mhm.
right? And like what we know, like the science says, like the Gottman Institute, their research shows that relationship satisfaction goes down about 70% with a pregnancy and the birth of a child.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
70%?
yes.
That's
And
a lot.
it is a lot.
Oh
It is
man.
a lot.
That makes me way more grateful for the relationship that I have, but that makes me so sad to hear that it's such a big number.
Yeah. It is a
Wow.
huge number. And there's so many things that are a part of that, right? It's not just about postpartum or I keep saying postpartum but really
Right.
perinatal,
Right.
perinatal mental health. That just happens with, I think, just the changes that are happening, and also fathers not being, very much a part of like the parenting or the pregnancy until the
Right.
child actually arrives, right? They can
Yeah.
only do so much in the bonding in those early stages, right, during pregnancy.
Right.
And yeah, those internal things that you don't see, right?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
internal changes that happen that really have an impact on relationships.
So, are there any strategies that you can think of to help women who are trying to balance I guess have like a work-life balance, either being pregnant or having a new baby or just in general?
I would say ask for what you and communicate. Oftentimes, I've seen that, especially when we're talking about, like, again, if it's a couples dynamic, that there's a lot of shared feelings that are happening, right?
Yeah.
And then remembering the shared goal and the fact that even if pregnancy, you are doing the pregnancy essentially on your own, because it's not like you can be like, hey, partner, take this baby for a second
Right.
and go, you sustain this life, for 5 minutes,
Right.
but I think just being able to communicate, asking for what you need, and just recognizing that you don't have to do it all. And the reality is that in any space and time, whatever we're focusing on, if we're giving it 100%, something else is not receiving all of your attention. Like in this moment, we're both moms, we're having this conversation. That means that we're both in this moment being businesswomen. So
Right.
and that's our 100% focus. We're not focused on being moms in this moment. And so that means, like, for this hour, you're going to have to put that aside,
Right.
right? No shame, no guilt.
Right. It's so funny you say that because as you were saying that, I could hear my baby crying downstairs because she's with her dad. And it's so true. Like you gotta like I'm like, okay, yep, put that away. Because my middle asked me, well, when are you gonna be off your call? Because I had another call today, and she's I was like, when I'm done, I got to get this stuff done. But I also know it's worth them seeing that it's okay to do both,
Yeah.
and that I have all girls. So I want my girls to be, grow up to be strong and confident women and be willing to do what they want, like, and follow their dreams, even if it doesn't look like what other people think it needs to look like, and that it's
Mhm.
okay to follow your career and, be a mom. And I know that's something my sister has struggled with too, because she's got a good job, and she, runs social media for a company, and she's had that struggle of like, I want to be home, but she loves her job, and like, it's a hard balance. And so I think especially the more like women like us model that too for like that younger generation, it's also going to help them be willing to find that balance, because I think historically it hasn't been there, but now that the
Mhm.
conversations are opening up and more of us are modeling that too for our children, my hope is that that would open things up in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, and we can absolutely hope that there will be a change just in terms of how employees, corporations will view just
Right.
pregnancy and, maternity and paternity leave, and just recognize that there is a space, like you said, to be able to do both, right? Because if I think back, like with myself, when I talk about just speaking up, like I was very open and honest with my boss. I was like, "Look, here's the deal. Here's what's happening. Here's what the company needs. What can
Right.
we work out?"
Right.
And I think presenting it in that way, it really helped to be able to co-create something that worked. And I think oftentimes, because it's like, oh, HR says this is what happened. So yes, on paper, I had my 8 weeks of leave, but I was doing what needed to be done. And I had the space and the time to also do what needed to be done for my children. And
Right.
that was such a great blessing for me. And so I think just asking, but not just saying, hey, can I have this? Go in with solutions, right?
Right.
Because oftentimes it's like, oh, we're going in, but have some solutions about, well, the questions that will be you can preempt these questions. So what's
Hmm.
going to happen with this project that you're working on? Well, I've identified this, this, and this as ways that we can mitigate any risks that's aligned with, this project.
Right.
And I think being able to have conversations in that way, I think being compassionate and graceful with themselves of saying, I need to push this meeting for 15 minutes. I'll be
Right.
there, but I'm going to be 15 minutes late because in this moment, I need to do X, Y, and Z to take care of myself, whatever it
Right.
may be,
Right.
right?
And I think it's also like that clarity, like having the communication skills to be clear, because they say like a confused mind does nothing, right? So if you go into it not having the clarity to say what you need, chances are it will be shot down, and then you don't have that balance. But if you can go into it, like you said, with the questions ready and the solutions ready, and you're very clear on this is what it needs to look like, more often than not, people are willing to meet you where you are when you've been proactive in that. And you can generally compromise more with people when you have that clarity and that, like you said, graceful communication and being able to, yeah, just clearly state what your needs are and have that plan of action to make it make sense.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. How can partners specifically support their loved ones who are going through the anxiety while they're working and trying to do both?
I think the partners can just be a grounding force, right? I think also partners need to educate themselves on the non-physical aspects of pregnancy so that they can also be in awareness and that this journey of pregnancy just does not become yet another emotional labor that women are carrying alone.
Right.
And so I think just being involved, recognizing that, like, and I'm saying motherhood and fatherhood, but that fatherhood is not a passive thing, right?
Right.
That non-birthing parent does not have a passive role only in the process, but can be the grounding force for some of these emotional things, can also be the person that encourages, the pregnant partner to be able to take a break, right?
Yeah.
Create that space. Don't wait for the person to come home and be like, okay, I'm too tired and I can't cook. But being awareness that, okay, you've had a really long day, and even if I can't cook, let's figure something else out just to take care of a meal. Simple things. Be present
Right.
for medical appointments.
Yeah.
Just be an active participant in the journey.
Yeah. I kept coming to mind, like all hands on deck, like just be
Yes.
there. Yeah. Be in it the best you can. And, I know a lot of times people like men get flack over, I shouldn't have to tell you. And then while that's true, yes, be, proactive in your own sense, but also like, I think some of us need to also recognize that they don't always know. And sometimes we send mixed signals. So it's okay to say, like, I need you to go pick up whatever, like 4 pizzas. So that way we have some in the house, some frozen pizzas for the days that it's just not happening and we, want to make something quick. And so that's just goes back to that asking for what you need, but also having that good sense of communication to say, like, I want you to pay enough attention to think about it and do the things without me having to tell you. But sometimes I know that you're not going to be perfect either and be able to do everything without me telling you. So I also need to communicate my needs to help
Yes.
help you help me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agreed. And sometimes we are, just because we like know how to communicate, we're just not always like because we're capable of something, we're not always able to do it.
Right. Right. Yes.
Because again, especially if it's new, you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because again, like I think about like my journey, and I didn't know what I was experiencing until I was way out of it and I was looking back. I was like, oh, that's why you were so mad all the time.
Right. And often that's how it happens too. That's often like we don't realize all of it and we don't put the pieces together until later. And so that's
Mhm.
why I think so many of these conversations are important to help
Yeah.
other people be more proactive and not have to wait till later. I had panic attacks and went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack. And they were like, "You're fine," sent me home. And it wasn't until 3 years after that I was like, that was a panic attack when I did my own research. So
Yeah.
that's so
No.
much of how it happens. But if we don't share and we don't open up about those reflections, I mean, how do a lot of books get written on self-help, right? It's the reflective process. So if we're
Mhm.
not putting this stuff out there, they're going to have to go through that same struggle of finding it out later. When the more we open up about it, hopefully the quicker that can come for them
Yeah.
or the less stigma there is to be able to ask for that help.
No, absolutely. And I wish more, more like OBGYN's office were just asking the simple questionnaires, right? There
Mhm.
is really literally, I think it's a 5 or 6 question tool that is out there just to ask that checks for perinatal mental health concerns.
Right.
And it's not enough practitioners are aware or utilize this in their appointments.
Right.
And it really is just, it's recognizing that it's a huge change, it's a huge transition. Women are giving birth in what I believe are not conditions that are in alignment with humanity,
Right.
right? I think, when as we have expanded in our growth and our knowledge and the things that are available to us, I think in a material sense, there has been more disconnection from that village, from that community, from that
Yeah.
space of honoring this journey of childbirth and of pregnancy, where there is that care,
Mhm.
that is given to women just to be able to, where they know they can be held, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, perinatal mental health is this new thing. It has always
Right.
existed. It was just not as prevalent because there was support.
Right. Yeah. We've just got very disconnected from that. I say all the time, I think that our society has done a disservice to the family, and
Mhm.
doesn't really value family like we used to. And I think I can see that there's a generational thing. Like we're at this shift a little bit where I think we're starting to see more of that, more families homeschooling again, more families wanting to eat healthier, be together, work-life balance. But we were on that trajectory away from it. And so I definitely see that as being a little disconnected there too. How can women build resilience and develop healthy coping mechanisms through that?
Goodness. I think talking to other women, I think asking questions, releasing shame and guilt, and yeah, just being open.
Mhm.
I think as women, we have such, I think, a huge periods of our life where we sit in so much self-doubt. struggling with self-esteem. And so it's almost kind of like being back in a classroom and being afraid to raise your hand to ask the question because you don't want to feel stupid,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Been there.
Yes. And so it's like, but I think just talking to other women, because there are spaces, right? That's the beauty. That's what I'm saying. Like, I love, like, now that there's technology,
Mhm.
there are spaces where women can go and ask those questions. There are spaces where they can get that support if they don't have a in-person life village available to them. And
Yes.
so seek those sources, ask the questions. Postpartum Support International is an amazing organization, and they offer a lot of free resources. And it's also a hub to be able to find clinicians and practitioners, because not everyone is a therapist there,
Right.
right? They
Right.
also, because they recognize the work around perinatal mental health, they also train non-mental health folks to be able to hold support for birthing families, because
Yes.
that's important, right? If it's only like, oh, I've got to go to therapy, and that's not really what it's about. It's really just about understanding what's happening for you. And when you're sitting with someone who's trained, they can understand and say, oh, if you need a higher level of care, then yes.
Yeah.
But I digress. But Postpartum Support International is a great resource. They have a hotline, they have free resources, and they have a directory to be able to link birthing families with resources to be able to get support around perinatal mental health. There are programs to help you for preparing before pregnancy or during pregnancy. And
Yeah.
so, like when I work with like young couples before they had they're starting their families, we talk about that, or they've come into my space for coaching or therapy while they're pregnant, and we're talking about what it looks like to prepare for a growing family, not on the medical side, because I'm not a doctor,
Right.
but the emotional side, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This mental side, that spiritual side of an expanding family, and what to expect, and how to be able to be preventative of some of the things that can develop into a perinatal or a postpartum mental health issue.
I love that. And that's one of the things I love about like coaching and the fact that I'm a paraprofessional also within a school, and they sent me to a mental health training on how to basically spot the signs of suicide and help, talk to the kids and broach the mental health conversations. And I, I just really appreciate how much work is being done around that, because I didn't feel like I got that. And I actually had started school for psychology and was like, I'm going to be a therapist, and then was undiagnosed with ADHD and ended up going for hair and all the things. And now I'm like back into this coaching place where it can still be a therapeutic presence without the therapy. And I'm in therapy personally. And I've had coaching personally. And I think it all works so well together. And it makes me think of one of the things that we had been trained in was the 8 dimensions of wellness. And so, like you saying, you're not a doctor, so you may not be on the medical, like physical side of it, but there are still 8 dimensions of wellness. So there's all these
Absolutely.
other areas that need to still be fulfilled, whether it's emotional or financial or spiritual. And so it really does take, like I said earlier, all hands on deck in various ways to support people. And I'm glad to see that that's something that is starting to blossom more, because I think it's been put on the back burner for so long. It's created a lot of trouble within our society. And so, yeah, I think it's just a beautiful thing to be able to offer that. And I'll definitely put the resources in the show notes as well. But for my
Yeah.
last question, if there's one thing that you want listeners to take away from this, if they listen to this whole thing and their brain is like mine and it doesn't like to remember everything, what is the one thing you would like for them to walk away from this episode with?
That while you're the only person who is pregnant and you're going through the process, is that you don't have to be alone, that there is support that is available out there for you, that your feelings are valid, and you just need to be able to find that space where you can show up and be your authentic self.
I agree, 100%. Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on my website at sonyabelletti.com. And also on Instagram at Sonya Belletti Coaching. In my coaching practice, I offer coaching around parental leave planning, perinatal mental health, family planning, and general life coaching.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I'm so grateful. This
So
was just
happy to
a
be here
really good conversation. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
as well. Thank you, Jessica.
Remember, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are loved. Keep pushing, keep loving, and most importantly, keep believing in your amazing ability to empower your legacy.